All right, welcome back to the Trust in God podcast, where we are trusting that God is going to do something amazing today. And today we're going to do something a little different. You can see that we don't have Grant here today. Grant is actually behind the camera. I'm here today with our principal at our school here at St. Augustine, with Lacie Allison. Also, you can maybe see my dog. He's decided to be a part of the podcast today. So today, our topic, we want to talk about Catholic education. That's why we got our principal here. We want to talk about Catholic education, not just as schooling, but part of the church's mission, and why have a Catholic school? But before we get into the nuts and bolts of the topic, give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. You're the new face on the podcast, so just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up here as the principal of St. Augustine School.
Yeah, so I grew up in Newton County. I am one of 6 kids. I have 4 brothers. My youngest brother is 7 years old, actually. So bit of an age gap there. My daughter is 6, and I have a 3-year-old son. I went to St. Joe here, Rensselaer, for a degree in biology and in chemistry. And I, with that, was able to be a microbiologist for a little bit of time before I had the calling to go to education. And so that's where I've been. I'm teaching secondary science, and been a parishioner at St. Augustine for a few years, 10-ish years, I think. And my daughter went here for preschool, as you know. And when the opportunity arose, I just, had a warm feeling in my belly and a mental feeling in my chest. And I know that sounds crazy, but that, just kind of said that this might be the right way to go. So haven't looked back.
Awesome. Well, we're going to dive into this topic of Catholic education. And I think it's a very prescient topic because we had, especially in Indiana with school choice, there's so many different options for schools, and especially with the rise of homeschooling after COVID, and different private schools and charter schools and the whole gamut that is out there, in addition to the public school system that is out there. And so these Catholic schools are not something that we look at as extra, in addition, as a kind of a caboose to the mission of the church, but they're integral into the church's mission. And so here at St. Augustine, we're about to celebrate 125 years of this school being here. How can you speak to this parish in this community, and what, or not parish, but the school and the parish? I mean, again, there's a connectedness. It's part of the parish mission, and how the parish school is integrated in the community, integrated into the life of Rensselaer and Jasper County.
Yeah, so I think it's really important what you said, that the school is not extra, right? It's not tacked on to the back of the church. A few years ago, Pope Francis actually put out, that all people have a right to education. And so it just looks different for every family. And that's kind of what choice is about as well. What's the best choice for your family? And for some families, that is the public school. The public school is not a bad option. But when you can look and factor into all the additional things that we can offer here, we educate the whole child. Okay, so we have that capability to bring you into the classrooms. Our kids go to Mass. Our kids get to go to adoration. We have small class sizes, so they get more one-on-one attention with their teachers. Historically, and hopefully continuously moving forward, we have 100% I learn pass rate, or I read pass rate, which is a lot higher than the state average. Our kids are reading at Mass, right? They're reading public speaking. They're doing convocations for their peers within the gym. Our first graders in a couple weeks are presenting on biomes in the first grade. My daughter comes home every day and tells me about the penguins, or something about snakes the other day. So our teachers are able to get that excitement in with our kids.
When I translate, I've been pastor here for 5 years, and it's impressive to see the list of valedictorians, salutatorians, Lilly scholars that are alumni of St. Augustine School. Even though we only go to 5th grade, that foundation is formed here that wherever they go for middle school, high school, and ultimately to college, that these students have this, as you said, they're fully developed, their whole person, and not just focusing on a test score or focusing on something like that, but to really bring them in and integrating into the community. We have a lot of alums who are very prominent members of our community as well, that, maybe they graduated 60 years ago, or maybe they just graduated and are starting to take new roles in the community. So as a kind of a new guy on the block, having just been here for 5 years, it's very impressive for me to see that as well. And so we talk about the community, we talk about the parents, the teachers, the students, and the broader community in which we are a part of. The church reminds us always, and you mentioned this document from the church back in 2022, and it really evolved from a speech that Pope Francis gave, but was put out by a Vatican congregation that reminds us what we hear in the Catechism, that the parents are the first teachers of the faith. I know that's something I always talk about in sacramental prep. We have our faith formation classes in sacramental prep, and I would remind the parents, we can't do it in that 1 hour a week. We can't even do it Monday through Friday, 8 to 3. That we have to be collaborators, co-workers with the families. They have to be an integral part of education. You've been in education long enough. So what are we doing, specifically, obviously, at St. Augustine, but you talk about integrating the whole person. A person comes from a family. Children don't just fall out of the sky from storks, right? Children are part of a family. And so how are we integrating parents and families into this community of raising this child, forming this child?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always describe, and I know a lot of other people do too, that our St. Augustine community is more than a village to raise your kid in. I was very, very well welcomed and loved when I first came in. As you know, I didn't have a chair in my office when I first started. And the amount of parishioners and the amount of parents, and as I was trying to call, that had offered to help with that. Day one, they first met me and they're trying to give me things. Super great. And I think that reflects back to how they teach their kids at home too. We have this family unit at the school. We don't just educate the child, right? We educate the whole child, not for a test, but we also educate the parents and the families. We bring them in and we do things together. So we have Lit Night coming up. We have all of our families are invited to come in and we talk about literacy and how early interventions are going to be a key part of success in their kiddos' future. Not just for those college-bound kiddos, but for all of the kiddos. We do a bunch of activities and in-school, after-school activities with our parents to help them understand what we're doing in the school and why we're doing those things in the school. And it is a constant conversation. There are several parents that I talk to every day, and not in the way that you think at the public school where I'm calling home and saying Johnny did whatever to Susie, but I'm calling home, I'm emailing home, sending communication apps, saying, hey, Billy held the door open for the entire class or what have you. And those parents are sending those same things back. So-and-so was talking all about your religion class today. My own daughter comes home with stories from all day long, every day. And as a parent, I know that makes me feel really good. And as an educator, it also validates our mission and what we're doing here, because our kiddos aren't just talking about the Reese's Pieces that they got to count in math or whatnot. They're talking about the gospel, and they're talking about those values and virtues that are really, really integral part of our faith.
Well, yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that that is what separates us and makes Catholic schools distinctive is that integration of the faith and the fullness of the gospel, right? The fullness of the truth is revealed. And I agree. It warms my heart, and I see these kids, and it isn't just about the test scores, right? Again, I'm proud to lift up those valedictorians and salutatorians, but there's also, those kids that I see that come alone on holy days of obligation. These high school kids that, not because their family's in shambles or anything, it's just like they realize like this is important. This faith formation that I received as a child, that, again, the parents are part of that. They're not going to just be Catholic or stay Catholic or whatever because of their interaction, their engagement at St. Augustine School. It takes a village inside the walls and outside the walls. And to see these children living out their faith and being fired up to do, amazing things, to want to do volunteering and service projects and outreach and really engaging the broader world and becoming missionaries and just going out and preaching the gospel in their own way. And so I think it's very telling of the gift of Catholic education. And so I think, on that topic, like what makes Catholic schools different, right? We've kind of been talking about that, but you send your daughter to a Catholic school, right? Why, as a parent, so step aside from educator, administrator mode, why is it important that your child is at a Catholic school versus the other options that are available?
So my daughter did 2 years of preschool here. Okay. And then just due to life and different constraints, she did have to go to work with me for a year at my former school, and she did a year public school. Nothing wrong with public school, okay? I am a product of public school myself. But we noticed as parents that same growth and passion was almost missing in those senses. So there were, several, almost triple the amount of kids in the classroom there than we have here. So those relationships and those connections that we often hear so much about with parents and educators and whatnot just couldn't be formed as easily. I remember Freya coming home and she was so upset because she wanted to buy her teacher a Bible to have in the classroom. And I was like, we cannot do that. And she said, well, they would have let me at St. Augustine. And that was kind of a heartbreaking moment that she wanted so badly to be here. We have yard signs for the school. And she was standing outside our house, like holding it up and trying to get people as they were driving by to sign their kids up for St. Augustine, whether or not they had kids or not. Like she did not care. Send them to St. Augustine, is what she kept saying. So our approaches in the building, and I say our, knowing that I'm the parent right now. So what I see on the parent side is it doesn't matter that she's in first grade because our fifth grade teacher knows exactly who she is. She knows exactly how many siblings she has. She knows what she likes, what she doesn't like. I was out of the building the last couple of days. I was doing safety training because as a parent and as an administrator, that is my top priority. And Freya had a headache. And the amount of school moms that she had there in that moment that she wasn't feeling well, I knew that she was going to be okay, at least until I could get there. Because, it doesn't matter if it's whomever, you're always going to worry as a mom. But I was less worried knowing that she was here and she was in capable hands. And all of our specials teachers, the ladies and the gentlemen in the parish and in our pastorate, they know my kids more than they know me. And that's how it should be. That's how I want it. And to watch them interact on both sides of our campus is the reason why this place is so magical and so important to me as a parent, because not only is she getting the reading, the comma placements in ELA, the math, social studies, science, etc., she's also learning from others. She's learning in our community. We have several prominent community members that come in to our schools and assist with our kiddos, volunteer their time to read them books or play with them at recess, talk about their careers. So we have all of those wonderful things that get to happen in those 7 hours. And that's all I get them for a day, is that 7 hours that I watch all of that magic happen at home with my own and here with our kids. So,
and I love it. I always joke with the kids on Friday at dismissal, at carpool, as they're getting ready to go home. And I'm like, I'll see you tomorrow. And some of them, they're like, I wish. Like, not because, every kid wants to go home and they enjoy it, but it's like because they do enjoy school, they enjoy being here. Their friends are here. You said the teachers are like other parents for them. And so it really speaks volumes, at least for our Catholic school here, of just that familial, that community, that bond, which really is at the heart of the Catholic school. And as we know, that not all of our students are Catholic. Mm-hmm. Not all of them even perhaps worship the Christian faith. But we all come together and we treat each other, under these Christian principles. And people know that, right? When they're walking in the door, it says St. Augustine Catholic School right on the front door. And we don't compromise our values. But we don't also, it's not a place where people are required to join the club, as it were, right? To conversion, because what is most important is the formation of their children. And I've seen many times through my 5 years that sometimes it's these non-Catholic families that are the most committed. Their children are almost the most just engaged and responsive, and those families are, they will bend over backwards and say, I love St. Augustine School. And to me, and to me that is very powerful as well, because that, there's a lot of ways in which people can disparage and make false allegations and say things that aren't necessarily true from an outsider's perspective, right? Because of things that they've been told. But the people that are here really, my experience is they find something unique and valuable, and they want to be here. And so, I guess, maybe speaking to that, like I said, we have a lot of children who don't belong to the parish, but again, not to steal all of the talking here, but like I remember one kid he told me that, well, my parents, they go to some other church, whatever it was in town. He goes, that's their church, but this is my church. And I was like, part of me as a pastor is like, oh, my heart's breaking. Like, well, I want it to be your church too, right? But I'm not in the business of tearing families apart. And so but there's a seed planting there, and maybe one day, on his faith journey, he may end up back in the pews and say, when maybe there's a struggle in his life, maybe something traumatic happens at his church or something, that he can come and he can feel safe and he can feel close to God here at St. Augustine because of this relationship, this encounter that we provided. And so I guess just speak to how we, as Catholic educators, as administrators, treat all our students with that same dignity, that same compassion, that same love that we would treat anybody.
Right. So I know of a couple parents that we currently have, because prior to July 28th of this year, I was St. Augustine mom. So now I have this new kind of unique role of St. Augustine principal, St. Augustine mom, and parishioner, I guess, in there too. So I know of two families, I think, maybe more currently, that have come to me and said, before, I knew God was real, I believed in God, but since sending my kids here, I actually know him now. My kid comes home telling all of these stories that they've learned at school, or asking questions, and I want to know the answer too. And I mean, I'm cradle Catholic-ish. And my daughter asks questions all the time that I don't know the answers to. One of them was, did God make the clouds out of water so Jesus could walk on them? I was like, well, that's a great question for Father. And so with our religion class, for example, to kind of answer, we're doing Catechesis of the Good Shepherd, which is a very much Montessori style way of learning. And it really promotes those questions that our tiniest friends have and helps to guide them into finding more information. We have a lot of parents that are extremely involved in that program, as well as all of our other programs at school. And it's making them question too, what can they be doing? What should they be doing? When I was in high school, I had a teacher who had said, it doesn't matter if you believe in the Bible or not, you need to know these biblical stories, because they come up all the time later on. So teaching those values and those stories here at this age, like you said, it kind of gives them something to look back on later on in life and make those connections and see that, well, when I was in third grade or whatever it may be, there was this place in Rensselaer where I felt loved, I felt cherished, and it'll bring them back eventually.
But several times as a priest, I have encountered these parents who either were non-Catholic or fallen away Catholic or in some kind of situation, and they send their kid to a Catholic school, and like your daughter asking these questions, and they want to know the answers themselves because they're kind of put on the spot by a first grader, second grader, and they're like, well, I probably should know this. I'm in my 30s. I'm an adult. I'm a successful person in my life. I should probably know this answer to be able to ask, to answer my first or second grader's question. And I've seen beautiful conversions out of that, where people have come into the church because their children had brought them, right? And those are some of the strongest witnesses of faith because they come seeking, right? Again, we're not here forcing people to convert, but we're presenting the truth. We're going to be unrelenting in that. Part of the Catholic school mission is we're not here to proselytize. We're here to, again, recognize the dignity of every single child.
Absolutely.
And to teach and educate and to form that child in the Christian values of the gospel. At the same time, we're not going to bend or shy away from the principles of our faith. And several times in my priesthood, I have experienced these families where it's a family member or maybe an entire family where through the kind of the questions of their child, like a first grader, second grader, and asking, like you said, your daughter, Mom, why is this? Dad, why? And they start to question their own faith. They start to want to seek the answers. They're successful people in other walks of life, and they think, I'm being stumped by a first grader here. And so they get on a journey. And so I think one of the other gifts of Catholic education is not only the formation of the student, but the formation of the family and bringing families closer to Christ. There's that evangelization that takes place, this conversion of heart, mind, and soul of all people involved. And I think too, just even if people don't become Catholic and don't convert, there's this this recognition of the dignity and the principles of our faith that people end up living out even subconsciously, which is, I think it makes it a better world, but also still is opening them up to the gospel to encounter at some point in their life. If they're not ready today, I'm a convert. I converted in college, and Grant, we've told our story where he kind of fell away and came back. Like, everybody's on their own journey, and I think Catholic schools can be a real part of that journey as well. And
right, like you said, it's at least planting the seed.
Right.
So then we have that ability here where we get to water that seed, or many seeds if it's the whole family. We have several events throughout the year. Next Wednesday is St. Therese of Lisieux's feast day. So we have our Leading Ladies lunch, where our girls and their important female figures in their life are going to come, eat lunch, and we're going to have a special prayer service. So I know just from attending those in the past as the mom that there are several women that come that are not part of the Catholic Church, but then they get this opportunity to come in and see what all there is. And that's just us watering a little bit more. And like you said, we're not here with our full and only intention to be evangelicalism, to convert people to our faith. However, it's one of those perks and special bonuses that come along and you get to look back on and be filled with joy on.
Yeah, it warms my heart when I see these young people, especially like I said, living courageously their faith, because it takes courage in this world. It is not easy. It's not easy for us as old people, but for young people to live the faith out, especially in high school and college, and but when it's a lot harder, and this goes back, we've talked about this in the podcast, it's a lot harder to live out that faith if you don't know God, right? If you don't have a relationship with Him. And so I think you said we're watering those seeds, right? Christ, God plants a seed. He is the giver of faith. All grace comes from Him. But like we're there watering, we're tilling that soil. And I think Catholic schools have an integral part in that. Not just formation of the child, like I said, the whole community, the whole society. So mentioning that, I said our culture, right? Our culture is constantly changing. It has been. I think we all live in a bubble, and we think, oh, this is the worst it's ever been, right? Everybody always says that, and if we look in history, probably not. We have our own challenges, and we have our own gifts, right? What do you think are probably the biggest challenges, but also the greatest opportunities that we have in our world today, with particularly in the realm of Catholic education?
So it's really funny. So this actually happened today at lunch, and it really got me thinking. One of the kids said, "Miss Allison, when you were a kid, did they have bikes?" Yes, sweetheart, there were bikes when I was a kid. There was also cars when I was a kid. And did they have YouTube? And I said, well, this might be as a shock to you, but our phones were attached to the wall. And they were all staring at me in awe, like, what? Did it have a cord? And all that. And I said, no, I memorized phone numbers. I couldn't just look them up all the time. And so just the look of awe and amazement. It reminded me of a book that I had read earlier this summer called The Anxious Generation. So it really talks about how, in my former studies, I did a lot of looks into how this generation of kiddos that we're teaching and educating right now, people are going to be writing dissertations about, because they are the first generation to go through with those smartphones and a device in their hand at all times, and how that's going to shape their brain, because their brains aren't developed yet, right? From a scientific standpoint, their frontal lobe has a lot more work to go through. So a couple weeks ago, last month, we had a canonization in the church of our first millennial saint, right? Is it the first? And so the kiddo is just talking to me all the time. They're like, he knew what the internet was. He was on the internet. He had a blog. He had a website. And so they are seeing themselves. They're not millennials, right? Their knees don't pop when they get up like mine do. But they're seeing themselves in those possibilities for how they can live out their faith, how they can live out their future in somebody that's much closer to their age, but has also had those experiences and miracles in their life. So they're really seeing themselves through that, which I think is a wonderful, beautiful thing. So in addition to that, we're, working with our kids on digital citizenship and how to seek out the good on the internet and not necessarily always the bad. And I think you had said maybe in one of your homilies, like, don't get your faith from the internet. And so the kids talk about that still, so we're trying our best, that's all anybody can do, to provide them with the tools that they need to be able to seek out the truth, to seek out the good, in today's society where everything is, like you said, constantly changing, evolving, to help them be able to plow their own way in a direction that is going to be most beneficial.
Yeah. Well, I think that is crucial because I think we can look back at education, right? And there's this whole debate out there, like, what's the best way to educate? And it's part of kind of the rise of the choice environment that we're in, with the rise of Montessori schools and charter schools and all of this, right? But Catholic schools we were at the forefront of this, right? I mean, St. Elizabeth Ann Seton founded the Catholic school system in the United States, in Baltimore, back in the 1700s, because there was no functional public school system. And her mission was the same then as it is today, is to educate the whole child. And she was ridiculed because, the scary Catholics back that time of the early colonies and the early country. But and in many times there is this cloud of mystery that surrounds the Catholic Church and Catholicism that I think gets people to shy away. But I think our history, our longevity, our the gifts that God has given us, especially the gift of experience, enables us to be able to navigate a lot of these kind of constantly changing things in our world that just keep happening. A church that could continue to function, and you think of the 2,000-year history, through the Dark Ages, through all those 100 years wars in Europe, and then even our own country, through our own independence, through civil war, through all the chaos, and to have that stability, and many non-Catholics continue to hold some of their fondest memories in those Catholic institutions, whether it's the Catholic high school they went to, or maybe the Catholic college, and so that bulwark of I think that foundation, that's the stability, that yes, the boat is rocking, but we have that confidence. That gets back to our podcast topic, right? The trust in God. That when we trust God, He doesn't say the storms are going away. He doesn't say He's going to take care of everything and make life just happily ever after, right? But that if you follow me, right? If you put your trust in me, I will see that you make it to the other side. And I think that's probably the most important lesson we can teach our students, because the world is going to change. Bad things are going to happen. That was our topic last week on the podcast. How do we endure them with hope, with joy, with peace in our heart? And the gift of Catholic education is we don't just learn, reading, arithmetic, writing, right? I said it in the wrong order, but we don't just learn the basics of education, but we learn how to survive and live as a fully integrated human being. And by definition, that means to recognize the fact we are made in the image and likeness of God. And so as we kind of wrap this up today, and as we kind of ponder Catholic education in general, and obviously we've talked a lot specifically here about St. Augustine School, the Church in her mission, right, is to go to all nations, to baptize all peoples. And so we are just a small part of that here in our pastorate in Remington, Rensselaer, and with St. Augustine School. And so I just want to encourage everybody to pray for Catholic schools all around the world, not just St. Augustine School, but every Catholic school. Pray for that embracing of Catholic identity, to never waver and sway from the truth of the gospel, because this is the next generation. This is what your children, your grandchildren are going to inherit. And so if we don't do anything now, if we kind of shirk our responsibilities now, there will be no Catholic education left for our grandchildren. And so we have to take up that mantle. Now is the time for the millennials, right? Now is the time for these people that are having children, is not just to send their kids to school, but to be fully and actively engaged in it. And so I think why? Because we trust in God. We trust that God is pulling us into something more than just getting a degree, getting a diploma. So I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for this time and this opportunity to be with us today. And I think as we wrap up this episode, we'll close with a prayer, praying for God's blessing upon you and your role as principal, our school, but in just the gift of Catholic education throughout the church. In the name of the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Almighty God, we pray that you continue to bless abundantly your people, and especially those educators who are called within the Catholic Church to teach, to educate, to form those children and families, to help them to truly navigate the waves, the storms of this earth, and to successfully follow in your footsteps, the footsteps that you have shown us so clearly in your gospel. May you continue to bless St. Augustine School. May you continue to bless all Catholic educators and all Catholic institutions with abundant generosity from benefactors and people to live out the mission that has been entrusted to us today, so that as we all await your second coming, we may continue to hand on these great gifts to our children and to our children's children. We ask this, Lord, through your Son, Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns forever and ever. Amen. Well, thank you, Lacie, again, and I look forward to great things happening here and throughout the world.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.